Well, the world is run by criminals. That's the bottom line. A lot of people are realizing this now, and they're pushing back in the way that they can, like as such with the yellow vest movement and all this sort of stuff. And with the tech movement, the whole tech situation is really bizarre. That's really what's leading us into the future is the tech industry, which is all this surveillance and everything that's coming with it. And like we were saying before we came on air, the tech industry is kind of driving itself. A lot of people think, even when you look at 5G and AI and all the stuff that's coming online, social crediting, this social crediting has been driven by government, sure, but the whole tech industry has been driven by the economics of itself, simply by the structure of our society. When you're living in a society, the kids are growing up into this, where it's all on their phone, their whole life, their access, it's an interface between them and the real world. It's this digital interface. Any threat of being locked out of that interface for thinking the wrong way or saying the wrong thing or stepping outside the lines, this is going to lock these people's minds into permanent control. They're going to be too scared to do anything. And if you do get locked out of the system, if you lose social credit points and suddenly you get locked out, who are you going to call? Who are you going to tell? Well, you can't access your phone. You've got no phone. You can't access your credit cards. They're all frozen. The only contact you've got is a cell phone. You've been locked out of that system. You can't use the internet. You're locked out of that. All you can do is go out and wander around. You won't be able to use your car because that'll be a thumbprint or whatever. That'll be a digital interface to turn your car on. So you'll be locked out of that as well. You'll probably find you've got a digital lock on your house door as well. So once you leave your house, you won't be able to get back in. And all you can do is wander around the city and hope that you run into someone to say, hey, I've been locked out. And as soon as you do that, there'll be surveillance cameras that say, oh, look, there's Trent. Look, he's down on social credit points. Obviously, we've locked him out everywhere. We better pick him up now and put him in the smart prison just to keep him safe. So Trent just disappears, and you can't even tell anybody what happened. They're all just going, gee, what happened to Trent?
Welcome to Tech Post. I'm your host, Trent Lapinski. In this episode, I interview Max Igan. He's a radio host and YouTube host, and in this episode, we talk about everything from currency, central banks, geopolitics, what's happening in the tech industry today, to 5G technology and ancient civilizations. This is an amazing episode, so please stay tuned. Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Max, and we're going to get into some crazy topics today. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to lately?
Well, I'm an activist, ex-musician. For the last 10 years or 11 years, 12 years, 11 years, I've been on radio, putting out radio message and doing YouTube clips and stuff like that, trying to wake the world up. But I'm just an ex-musician, basically. I lived most of my life on the outside of society and got to a point where society became too convoluted to not start speaking about it. So here I am.
And I've been enjoying listening to your radio show when I first discovered it, I think about a year or so ago. So I'm a little bit new to your stuff, but I did dig back a little bit, and I've really been enjoying your recent stuff and then some of your older stuff as well. It's really rare for me to find someone that has kind of a similar perspective of the world. And I feel like the way your mind works is somewhat similar to how my mind has been working lately. So I would love to get your opinion on just like what is going on with like the state of this world today. We've got massive censorship from the tech industry right now. We've got geopolitical like chaos like we haven't seen in a long time, from the yellow vest movement in France to what just happened in New Zealand, to Donald Trump being president, to all these. The geopolitical spectrum we're in right now is chaos. And then there's this like also this weird mix of what's also happening technologically, and that's kind of dictating or at least influencing a lot of the things that are happening in the world.
Well, the world is run by criminals. That's the bottom line. A lot of people are realizing this now, and they're pushing back in the way that they can, like as such with the yellow vest movement and all this sort of stuff. And with the tech movement, the whole tech situation is really bizarre. That's really what's leading us into the future is the tech industry, which is all this surveillance and everything that's coming with it. And like we were saying before we came on air, I mean, the tech industry is kind of driving itself. You know, a lot of people think, even when you look at 5G and AI and all the stuff that's coming online, social crediting. I mean, this social crediting has been driven by government, sure, but the whole tech industry has been driven by the economics of itself, simply by the structure of our society. You know, you put people in scarcity and shortage, and you know, then you give them these opportunities to make millions of dollars, and so they go into these industries and they start creating these projects, and the industry drives itself. A lot of the people that are creating a lot of the surveillance stuff, even when you look at Tom Wheeler, um, what was driving him was billions of dollars. You could see it in his eyes when he was giving his speech with the FCC saying, oh, you know, we're not going to wait for the standards. You know, there are billions and billions of dollars and microchips everywhere. And you can see it in his eyes. He's got this, it's like a demon possession or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Money's a weird thing, you know. When you start collecting money, it's this like a pathogen. You know, you get $1,000 and you think, gee, I wonder if I can get $5,000. Gee, I wonder if I can get to 10. Gee, I wonder if I can get to $1 million. And once you get $1 million, you think, wow, I've got $1 million. I wonder if I can get $5 million. And you just keep going till you got billions of dollars. And even when you got billions of dollars, you got $100 billion. Wow, I wonder if I can get $1 trillion. You know, so, and all you're doing is pulling money out of circulation, locking it up so no one can use it. And there's nothing you're going to do with this stuff. I mean, you're never going to be spending all this in your whole life. Doesn't matter what you're going to do with it, unless you're just creating all these useless programs for the sake of doing it, you know. So the whole thing kind of drives itself. So we're in this really weird situation at the moment. I mean, like I said, a lot of the people of the world are realizing it, and they're trying to do things about it, you know, the yellow vests and all this sort of stuff. My argument is that the whole thing is run by criminals, and we could stop the whole thing by simply pulling our support from it, which is a lot of, again, of what the yellow vests are trying to do. So, you know, we could stop all this by pulling support from the system and giving support to each other, to, you know, to the people around us. That would change everything. Stop judging our lives by our economic value, and look at our human value. You know, think of integrity as a currency. That would be a way through this.
I love kind of the perspective that you've been bringing, because I mean, you're right. This is criminal behavior. These are criminal actions. We've long surpassed any rule of law here that makes any sense, and we're kind of past that point. But at the same time, you know, I see also in myself and in others just how brainwashed and indoctrinated we've become. Because I mean, I grew up, you know, in Northern California, in the Bay Area. You know, I've been around the tech industry my entire life. And it's only really been the last like 5 or 6 years that I've kind of started to wake up to a lot of this stuff. And for me personally, it was because I figured out that I had Lyme disease. If you want to open a corruption rabbit hole, you know, Lyme disease is insane. I literally just finished reading the book Bitten, which was about the guy who discovered Lyme. Well, it turns out he actually created it for the US government in the 50s and 60s as a biological weapons research program. So it either escaped the lab, or the Russians stole the research, or there's a couple different theories out there. But either way, you know, it just speaks to the nature of the corruption of, you know, what's been going on. And for me, that was like a major red pill that has woken me up to a completely new reality, because it was like, ultimately now, you know, I'm living in this world where I've actually got a biological weapon inside of me that has impacted my health. So, you know, how do you explain that to people? And the only way that I can explain it is the fact that, you know, we live in this world governed by criminals. And there's just so much corruption, and there's so much insanity, and there's so much chaos that has come from it. It's just completely shifted my paradigm in how I view things, because now whenever someone tells me anything, my immediate instinct is, okay, but how does it really work? Because there's so many false assumptions that I've been told my entire life that I now realize are nonsense. They're bullshit, from ancient history to even the city I live in. Like, I don't know if you've ever studied the city of San Francisco, but it's like, you know, they sell the story of the gold rush. Well, if I told you, like, oh, there's a river in India that's got a bunch of gold in it, like, are you going to just leave your family and pack up and go there because you can pick gold out of the river? No. So why do we believe that story about, you know, the city of San Francisco and that's how it was built? the population went from like 1,000 people to like 30,000 people in 2 or 3 years. No, I'm sorry, that wasn't a gold rush. Something else happened, and they've hidden it from history. So I don't know what happened. I have a theory it was possibly refugees or something like that, from some kind of conflict or something. But there's so many little things like that where I've realized everything from ancient history to something as simple as a disease. There's so many layers of corruption surrounding all of these things that we really just don't know what reality is anymore.
Well, we don't. That's the thing. And you're right about San Francisco. The whole story of how it was created is completely ludicrous. All you got to do is look at the sewer system beneath San Francisco. The settlers did that, did they? They thought, oh yeah, we're going to need this multi-level sewer system built out of, how many bricks would it have taken? The incredible work down there. I mean, yeah, this isn't something that happened as a result of the gold rush. Not at all. But like a lot of people, you look at the world and it doesn't make sense to you why things are the way they are until you're prepared to realize that the concept of nations and governments and all this sort of stuff. We're living in a people farm. Think of it as a people farm. Each nation is a separate pen. People are given papers so they can leave their pen now and then. But the whole thing, this entire international government system is one multinational, multi-generational criminal cabal masquerading as a government that has superimposed itself over human consciousness. And they all work together. They go and have these meetings in the United Nations and all this stuff. They turn the cameras on now and then so we can see them arguing with each other, so we think all this fiction is real. And then when the cameras go off, they plan what they're going to do. They have meetings like the Bilderberg meeting and all of these sorts of things that they go and plan what the next move for the world is going to be. And they play all the nations off against each other. All the wars are simply depopulation programs to create this specter of fear. As a great quote by Plato, who said that when the tyrant has disposed of enemies, foreign or domestic, and there's nothing left to fear from them, then he's always whipping up some war or other in order that the people may require a leader. That's the way it goes. We have to believe we need these people to keep us safe. But who do you need your government for? What do you need national security for? Who are they protecting you from? What, from China coming to invade you? China doesn't want to invade you. China's a landmass full of people who don't want to have war either. It's the Chinese government and the United States government playing each other off against each other to create the specter of fear. And if you were to go to war, you'd find that the Chinese would come there and they'd bomb all the buildings. They wouldn't bomb any of the government buildings. They bomb all the people. And if the United States goes to China, they'll bomb all the people as well. They won't bomb any of the government buildings. They won't bomb any of the key buildings that are actually running the war. They'll just depopulate each other's countries. They'll borrow money from a central bank to do it, and then all the people in the countries can borrow money from the central bank to rebuild all their things again after the war. It's a scam. The whole thing's a scam. One of the main reasons they want to go in and take out Iran at the moment is because Iran has no central bank. The Muslim world, why they hate the Muslim religion so much is because there is no usury. There's no interest in the Muslim religion. If you look at the Jewish-controlled banking system, this is a very, very controversial point for a lot of people, but it is. It's a Jewish-controlled money system, and the Jewish money system has usury, interest attached to a loan. So that it puts everybody in a permanent state of debt and scarcity. And if you look at the Jewish-controlled money system, they don't charge interest to themselves. A Jew will never charge interest to another Jew, but they'll charge interest to everybody else. And when they're the ones who run the entire world banking system, then they're charging interest to everybody in the world except for themselves, which is why that country is able to excel and get trillions of dollars a day. In the Muslim world, there's no interest. That's why they want to vilify these. There's no central bank in Iran. So there's no way to milk the population for interest and keep them in a state of permanent scarcity, keep them subservient to a corporate system. This is why the axis of evil that George Bush named wasn't just Muslim countries, but it was every country that didn't have a central bank, because the central bank is what controls the world. The central bank, when you control the money system, as said by I think it was Amschel Rothschild said, I care not who makes the nation's laws, who controls the money system controls the country, and I control the money system. That's how it works. Once you control the money system, you control the government, you control the government, you control the people. That's how it works. And you create this whole specter of conflict everywhere, this fear of terrorism. Stage these terror attacks Get MK Ultra shooters to go in there, or just people in uniform to go and shoot them up themselves, get them dressed up and go and do whatever you want, and just create this spectre. Sometimes you don't even have to stage a terror event. You can just put it in newspapers and make people believe one's been staged. But it creates that spectre of fear. So you need the government to protect you. You need surveillance everywhere. You need social crediting everywhere. It's one big crime family. When you step back and look at it and realize that all of these governments work together, then everything falls into place. Suddenly the world makes sense. You see what's going on here. It really begins to make sense. And yeah, they've falsified our history. They've falsified everything. That's why they created the government-run education system. So you just teach people whatever they want. I've often said, how long would it take to change history? Well, conceivably, to do it effectively, it would take 3 generations. But if you were to depopulate the world in some way, if there was a big war or a cataclysm or whatever happened back in the mid-1800s, it would appear something happened. But whatever did happen, all you'd have to do would be to repopulate the world with children, and it'd only take 1 generation to change history. And you look at the stories of the orphans and the foundlings and all this sort of stuff, the orphan trains, 200,000 to 300,000 children shipped from east to west across the United States, 100,000 children sent out to Australia, to Africa, to New Zealand. Also, like around about 1880, this was happening. 450,000 children trafficked around Europe in 1 year, around about circa 1880. So, you look at this and you start thinking, well, we've got no clue what history is. And if we can factor in the reality that the world's run by criminals and it's all one big crime family, all working together to achieve a common goal, suddenly the world begins to make sense.
In the 1800s that's where I've been spending a lot of my research time lately, is looking back to the 1800s, because we have visual proof from back then. They had cameras. So we have images of cities. We have images of, what was life like back then. And there's so many inconsistencies and there's so many things that just do not make sense to me, from looking at the technology and the buildings and the structures that these people had. These are supposedly, what the narrative is, we're told these are horse and buggy people. And yet they're living in these like mansions, Greco-Roman style buildings, and they've got advanced, sophisticated architecture. They've got clearly some form of technology to be able to power and heat these giant buildings. I mean, if you look at like major cities in the United States, like Philadelphia and Chicago, like these are places where it snows. So, if you create a giant building, you have to be able to heat it somehow. Otherwise, the people living there are going to perish during the winter. So, it's baffling to see these structures that, for the time period and what we're told the technology that existed back then, it doesn't make sense. They clearly had access to energy, or, they had gas lines running through the building, or they had something to be able to, just simply live in these structures. The fact that they were able to build these structures, and many of these structures are still standing to this day, is also a testament to who those people were versus the structures and buildings that we build today. I feel like we're almost regressing in human history as we get to the modern time, because you look back and, you've got all these structures and these ancient buildings and these ancient megaliths and all these sites that, again, are still, many of which are still standing this day. And then you look at something that we've built recently and it's got a 30, 40, 50-year shelf life. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah, well, we're digressing, and we're being told that we're progressing, but we're not. The more you make things prefabricated, and it's removing us from technology. It's removing skills from people. By creating prefabricated products, you forget how to make the product yourself. Over a period of 1 generation, this skill is lost. Things like glass blowing. Just the basic skill of glass blowing. A lot of people, this is all done in factories now by machines. So over a couple of generations, people don't even know how to do this anymore. Young kids now don't even know how to plant a garden, one of the most basic skills. So, all of this stuff is a loss of skill, and it's a degradation of the human experience. We've got buildings like this here in Australia as well. I built in around about, the early 1800s, like 1820, 40 years after this country was supposedly settled. that are magnificent buildings. I mean, and they're supposedly built by convicts. And we didn't even have excavators and quarries and all that. What did the convicts do when they got here? That's the first thing they did, was it? They went and they dug all these quarries and they excavated all these huge stones. They found ways to transport them to where they wanted to build the cities. And then they built these huge Gothic Roman-style buildings, as you do when you're colonizing your country and killing off all the native inhabitants. I mean, all these stories are completely ludicrous that they give us for our history. So it is an interesting thing to look into. But even when looking at that, I mean, we face the danger of getting stuck down a rabbit hole. I mean, I think a lot of this information is coming out now because it's so romantic. It really does stimulate the imagination. You want to know. We've always wanted to know what our history is, and we need to know what our history is. But we've also got to pay attention to our surroundings. This whole 5G system that's coming online, the whole social crediting system that's coming online with it, the mass surveillance system that has been put in place under the guise of keeping us safe. It's very, very important that people pay attention to this because once it gets in place, it's going to be very, very difficult to escape from. And a lot of the information that we want to find out about history, it'll disappear. We won't even have access to the things we want to find. I mean, they're changing the search parameters and things on Google now. It's very, very difficult to find information you want to look for. Even my last radio show, someone pointed out, I put out a radio show, my last YouTube clip was called A Stupid War with Iran and the Coming False Flag. And someone pointed out and said, well, even if I copy this title and search on YouTube for it, I can't find your video clip, Max. I can find another channel that's mirrored it, but I can't find yours. I thought, well, isn't that interesting? So they're changing the search parameters on everything. So soon it's going to be even very difficult to research ancient history because we didn't pay attention to our surroundings right now. This is something that I've been seriously trying to point out to people. I mean, I put a lot of focus on ancient history recently. I've done a lot of shows on the discovery of Tartaria and the possibilities of Atlantis and the possibilities of lost civilizations, the possibilities that a lot of the heating that you're talking about in these buildings was done by free energy and copper top buildings. And we had a way of doing this because a lot of these buildings are designed like crystal radio sets, And I've spent a lot of time on this. Now, I'd love to continue looking down this avenue of research. But at the same time, I have to really pay attention to my surroundings at the moment and what is happening while people are busy with their heads down these rabbit holes, Because if I don't pay attention to that, then pretty soon I won't be able to research Tartaria. I won't be able to research free energy. I won't be able to find out any of the information I want to be able to find out because I'm going to find myself living in a smart prison. That's what's going to happen to a lot of people. A lot of people that are researching a lot of these things are going to find that these websites are disappearing and their search parameters are changing, and they're going to wake up one day and they're going to look around and go, hang on a minute, how did I end up in this smart prison system where everything I'm doing is tracked and monitored and I can't use cash anymore and every purchase is monitored and everywhere I go is monitored and everything I do is controlled, and they've got these electromagnetic prison fences around me that are making me sick and create active denial zones and lock me out of areas through virtual fences and all the stuff they're putting in. This is what's happening, and we've got about 18 months or 2 years to turn this around until it comes online in a lot of our countries and a lot of our places. So it's very important that people pay attention to this, brother.
From the algorithm changes, I mean, I can tell you Google does change their algorithms on a regular basis, and they've been tweaking their algorithms and they've been doing this stuff for a very long time. So pretty much since the inception of Google, they've been tweaking their algorithms to be able to do a wide variety of things. And in mostly with the aim of being a profitable advertising company. That's what Google is. A lot of people forget that's where they make their money is advertising. So
there's another thing as well, like I said about being distracted from the real world and being led into this artificial world. Mm-hmm. Interesting thing about the word Google, it distracts us. We're sitting here looking at this screen all the time. You look at the word Google, go ogle, just go ogle at all this other stuff. Don't pay attention to what's happening around you. They tell you what they're doing. They tell you with the words. It's interesting. And something else I've said is like they're removing all the knowledge. They're burning all the knowledge. All the libraries are disappearing. They're digitizing all the books. And what was the first reader called? It was called Kindle. Mm-hmm. And what's Kindling doing? And what's the new reader called? It's called Amazon Fire. They're
Yeah.
burning the knowledge. They're telling you that they're burning the knowledge.
Never
While you
thought
go
about
ogle, while you go ogle stuff, we're just burning all the knowledge with Kindle. Well, we're kindling the fire to burn all the books. The book burnings that you hear about, the loss of knowledge that you hear about, the scrying mirrors. I think that this is a cyclic thing that happens every time. And they're burning all the knowledge and they're removing all of our life skills and they're giving us apps to replace them. And then in a little short time, and when you get to that point where you're completely dependent upon this system for all your communication, they're even getting rid of landlines they're talking about. They're removing phone boxes. So everything's going to be internet based and it's all going to be up on the cloud. So none of it's on your computer. It's all on the cloud. I'm even getting harassed by my internet provider now for not moving to WordPress because I've still got an old HTML website. They don't want me to have that. They want me to have a WordPress site because then it exists only on the cloud and they can turn it off and shut it down anytime they want. And they can say that you're against WordPress guidelines for whatever you happen to be saying on your website. So there's all this contractual stuff that goes with it and it all disappears onto the cloud and all your communication is on the cloud. When you're living in a society, the kids are growing up into this, where it's all on their phone, their whole life, their access, it's an interface between them and the real world. It's this digital interface. Any threat of being locked out of that interface for thinking the wrong way or saying the wrong thing or stepping outside the lines, this is going to lock these people's minds into permanent control. They're going to be too scared to do anything. And if you do get locked out of the system, if you lose social credit points and suddenly you get locked out, who are you going to call? Who are you going to tell? Well, you can't access your phone. You've got no phone. You can't access your credit cards. They're all frozen. The only contact you've got is a cell phone. You've been locked out of that system. You can't use the internet. You're locked out of that. All you can do is go out and wander around. You won't be able to use your car because that'll be a thumbprint or whatever. That'll be a digital interface to turn your car on. So you'll be locked out of that as well. You'll probably find you've got a digital lock on your house door as well. So once you leave your house, you won't be able to get back in. And all you can do is wander around the city and hope that you run into someone to say, hey, I've been locked out. And as soon as you do that, there'll be surveillance cameras that say, oh, look, there's Trent. Look, he's down on social credit points. Obviously, we've locked him out everywhere. We better pick him up now and put him in the smart prison just to keep him safe. So Trent just disappears and you can't even tell anybody what happened. They're all just going, gee, what happened to Trent? And it's getting to the point now they can just create a digital version of you and you can still be up there talking to people doing a podcast. They won't even know it isn't you because they've been sampling your voice for the last 10 years. They've created these whole digital personas where they can virtually mimic anybody now. And they've got that stuff where they can just put the marks on their face and they can sit there, two cameras, and they can put words in your mouth with your voice. They can do the word, So you can see where we're going with all this, folks, if people don't pay attention. So that's something to really look at. And you working in that industry, you know all these algorithms exist. You know where the tech's going. And we're being led to a very, very dark place. And people won't even know the difference on what reality is and what reality isn't before too much longer.
I'm in San Francisco. I've been in the tech industry. I know exactly what's coming. And it scares the crap out of me because I know exactly what they're building. I know how they're building it. I know the software they're using to build it. These are all tools that I've learned how to use myself. These are tools that I've used on my previous projects. I'm using them in my current projects. It's frightening because I kind of see some of the projects I'm working on right now as being some of my last, because I know that once these projects are out there and once this technology is available, I don't see how capitalism can function anymore. I don't understand, I don't understand what's going to happen to the economic system that we have, because the way that it's set up with artificial intelligence and the way that we're trending right now is one or two companies are going to just own everything. And there's not going to be any room for competition. There's not going to be any more free market. We're going to enter a phase of automation within the next 10 years where most people are not going to have a job anymore. And then they have no life skills. They have no education. The educations they get from the education system are completely useless. When I meet people who graduate from Stanford or Harvard, I'm just like, oh crap, can I even have a conversation with this person? Because I'm like, they only know what's inside the box. They have no experience most of the time outside the box. This is not exclusive. Of course, there's exceptions to the rule, but often people that are the most educated, in at least the United States that I've come across, they're the most indoctrinated.
That's what the education system is. It's an indoctrination system. It's training you to think in one way. University, one way of thinking, one verse, universe, one way. You know, what we're heading for is basically a universal income, a basic universal income for everybody, which will be like a welfare state. Everybody will be on welfare
You
because
cross
there
that
won't be.
line and that income goes away.
Yeah, and you cross the line and the income goes away. And so it becomes a fully automated society. Like you're saying, people just have to work the job they're given because they don't have any life skills. They can't go and do anything on their own. They've not been taught anything on their own. They don't need to do anything on their own because a little app will take care of it for them. They don't even need to learn their way around their own city. They don't even need to learn anything. They don't have to think at all. You know, so and what that does as well, it's like if you don't use
freak out
your
when they get
legs.
in my car because I don't use GPS. I know my way around. I grew up here.
Yeah. Well, you know, like it's like if you don't use your legs, they become atrophied. If you don't use your muscles, they become atrophied. If you don't use your brain, it becomes atrophied. People don't even think now. Oh, turn left here. Okay. You know, oh, there's a ramp. Take the ramp onto the traffic lane. You know, merge with the traffic. Oh, okay, I merge with the traffic. Of course you do. Think about it. You know, this is basic common sense. But no, even this has been taken away from people. So, and there are even little apps now that you can get on your phone which will mimic you and think like you and give you advice when you need advice. So you're getting advice from yourself. So they're kind of creating an app to become you, to take over. If you do the wrong thing, your app can do it all. They'll just put the app up there. They'll put a little CGI version of you and your friends won't even know you disappeared. And suddenly you'll just be promoting the government line, you know, and everyone will see how successful you are for doing so. So they'll want to copy you, you know. So this is how they'll do it. It's pretty freaky the way we're doing, but like you say, when you look at it, the people running the companies is the problem, and they don't know what they're doing. They're only doing it because they're motivated by this whole social mechanism, this whole economic mechanism. They think they're climbing to the top of the economic and social ladders, and they're rubbing shoulders with all these cool people, and this lifestyle is unfolding for them. And all they don't realize what they're being led into. And even the way society is developing into a two-caste society, the poorer are becoming much, much poorer, and the rich are becoming much, much richer. But they're all heading for the same place. They're all heading for this universal basic income because they'll have no skills. It'll only be the people who run the companies at the top who will have any skills. But eventually those companies will get merged with other companies. It'll end up Amazon runs the whole thing, you know. So you'll have Amazon and Google running the whole show eventually pretty well. And that's what it's going to be. And it'll only be the CEOs of those companies, which only really need to be two people, you know, and that'll be who's running the whole thing. Eventually they'll merge into the one thing, get bought out by the banking cartels at the top, and then the banking cartels will buy each other out, and eventually you've got one family sitting at the top saying, I win. Game of Thrones. That's the way it works, you know.
Yeah, although I don't know if anyone will expect Bran to win that. I don't know if I'm spoiling this for anyone, but whatever. But you know, so I wanted to get your opinion on 5G and talk about that a little bit more because, you know, I've read some of the Russian research about microwave technology and the technology that a lot of 5G is based on. Ultimately, they're, you know, this technology, the microwave technology that they're using for 5G, I mean, has documented health effects. The Russians researched this in the 40s and 50s during the Cold War, after World War II. The United States governments researched this. If you can look up some like old CIA files and documents from like I think the 70s or the 60s, they know exactly what this technology is capable of and how it can be used as a weapon. And this technology can be weaponized. It's just a matter of applying a high enough electrical current to these transmitters and to these antennas. So, you know, they're obviously rolling out low power versions of this technology, supposedly, for the 5G rollout. But all it takes is increasing the voltage. And all of a sudden, what we're using for communications becomes something that can be turned into a weapon. Can you talk a little bit about your thoughts on 5G and then also what they're doing in Australia to actually some of the people that are trying to combat this?
Well, 5G is a weapon system. It's absolutely a weapon system. That's one of the scary things about it. And it is very dangerous electromagnetic technology, very dangerous health damaging frequencies that they're using. But it's a weapon system. I mean, all you got to do is go onto the DARPA websites, look up DARPA and non-lethal weapons, and you'll find all of this stuff is 5G powered. Active denial systems, microwave cannons, all the stuff they used in Iraq in the Gulf War. This is all 5G powered, the whole lot. So that's the problem with it. You know, it is a huge problem. And you've just got to ask yourself, do you trust your government enough to have this in place? And even, okay, maybe you do. Well, what about the next government and the next government and the government after that? What about what happens if there's a revolution and some dictators take over and this whole technology is in place? So you're allowing a weapons system to be put blanket over the entire country, a weapons system that can be used to target individuals. And it's also a mass surveillance system that can do all the things that I mentioned before, lock you out of certain areas, just track you every single thing that you do. So it's just bad. It's a really, really stupid idea. And you've got to look at what's the world's leading cause of death. It's government. You can say it's heart disease. No, it isn't. It's government. Democide is the world's leading cause of death, always has been. Don't trust these people, folks. You can't trust your government. Doesn't matter where you live, you can't trust the government. What we're doing here in Australia, there's a barrister who has come to the party. See, what happened, there was an area, I think it was in Sydney or Tasmania somewhere, but there was an area where they went to put in a 5G post, and there happened to be 4 doctors living on this street and a couple of lawyers living on this street as well. And they kind of looked at this and went, hang on a minute. And so we've determined that 5G is damaging to your health. This is well documented that it is. The governments are saying they don't have any standards or anything yet, but they do. The standards exist. They know exactly what they're doing. So same as any type of microwave technology, even a doctor will leave a room when you're getting a CAT scan or an X-ray. They leave the room because the radiation's damaging. So doctors know that this is damaging to biology. What people are doing is they're going in there making claims, saying, "Oh, this is this and this is that," but they're not providing any medical evidence for it. So this barrister's figured out all you got to do is get a doctor to say, yes, electromagnetic radiation causes harm. That's all you need, basically. And once you've got a statement from a doctor that's saying, yes, this causes harm, then any attack, any 5G pole that's around you really constitutes an assault against you. So we have laws in Australia, like the criminal code, where anybody living in any place, anywhere, you're entitled to quiet enjoyment of your life. That's the basis of living, is quiet enjoyment of your life. If you're not hurting anybody, you're not disturbing anybody, you're entitled to just sit there and enjoy yourself. Just enjoy being alive. That's what life is about. So any threat to that quiet enjoyment is considered to be an assault against you. So if there's a pole that's put outside your house and you have a doctor's report here that says electromagnetic radiation is bad and dangerous, and this thing is projecting this electromagnetic radiation, then how can you be in quiet enjoyment of your life in your house, knowing that this thing is poisoning you outside? Suddenly you're not in quiet enjoyment anymore. You're sitting there in fear of this pole that's outside. That constitutes an assault against you, because you're entitled to quiet enjoyment of your life in your own house. If you can't do that while this pole's there, and you have a medical reason for it, here it is, a doctor says this stuff's dangerous, and you've just put it there. This constitutes an assault against me, so you need to remove that pole. And that's what we've been doing, and it's been working. So, if you look at your criminal code in whatever state that you're in, and figure out what you are entitled to. Are you entitled to quiet enjoyment of your life in the comfort of your own home? And every state must have some form of criminal code. I mean, there's got to be something that says there that, hey, I'm entitled to the pursuit of happiness in my life. Isn't that the basis of what it means to be an American? Quiet enjoyment and the pursuit of happiness. How can you do that if there is this medically proven assault being conducted against you with this pole there? You can no longer pursue happiness because you're freaked out all the time. You're sitting in your life freaked out that you're under assault and no one's doing anything about it. So, presenting it in the right way and not becoming across as paranoia. And I mean, a lot of people are going in there, they're asking doctors to write out a report saying, I'm being affected by 5G. I need you to document my medical condition. They're saying, well, hang on, you're delusional, and they're putting him in jail, locking him up, because it's the wrong approach. We're not asking you to identify a condition in me that I'm claiming I've got. I want a medical report for it. All I want is a doctor's opinion of the danger. So, it's this approach that we've been having, and it's been working.
Well, I can tell you from my experience. So, as I mentioned earlier, I've been dealing with Lyme disease. And one of the things Lyme disease does is it eats away at the sheaths of the nerves. So the protective layer of your nervous system has these like fatty tissue sheaths around them. And when that gets eaten away, it exposes your nerves to the environment. So I've actually, unfortunately, experienced a little bit of this nerve damage, what it essentially is. So it actually does make me electromagnetically sensitive. So I can actually sense and feel Wi-Fi and 4G technologies as it is today. So I already have the capacity to do this. There's many other people that have medical conditions that are EMF sensitive and can feel EMF radiation and sensitive and have sensitivity towards it. It's a very real thing. So 5G is going to amplify those effects because it uses a completely different frequency set than the existing 4G and Wi-Fi and that infrastructure. So comparatively, when you're using these radio waves, it's one thing. And these, again, are very low powered devices. But when you switch over to microwave technology and these higher frequencies, it becomes a completely different equation. I've even personally been using a frequency generator because you can actually use frequencies also to heal. If you apply the right frequencies to be able to do, you can actually do all kinds of things. You can stimulate acupuncture points, meridians within the body. You can do a lot of different things with frequencies and actually have a positive health effect if you're applying the right frequency to the desired area to be able to achieve that. So Royal Rife was one of the people who helped create this technology in the early 1920s and 30s, I believe. And so there definitely has been a lot of research that's gone into frequencies and how frequencies can and do affect the body, both positively from a healing aspect, and you can also use frequencies to kill bacteria, viruses, cancer even, to the negative effects of the wrong frequencies at the wrong power consumption, and then what health effects that has, which again, we're talking weapons here. You can literally use these technologies as weapons. So of course, if you're paranoid, it's not like they're purposely rolling out the weaponized version of 5G from your local cell phone carrier. That's not their intention. They just want to sell you a higher bandwidth plan so they can charge you more money. It's all about that profit motive. The problem is the hardware that they are using to do that is capable of being turned into a weapon with the right software and with the right amount of energy applied to it. And that is the problem, is, as you said, who 10 years down the road is going to be in charge? It always confuses me, especially in the United States where, we have this left-right paradigm, right, of the political spectrum. And it's like, you have whoever's in power, goes, oh, it's, because my guy's in charge, it's a good thing. And, then 8 years or 4 years later, the next guy gets in power and then it just flips. And it's like, oh, now this is bad. And, whatever. And you kind of see that paradigm shift happening. But the reality is it doesn't matter who's in charge today. It can be used for something evil. It can be used for something bad in the future. And that's the problem, is we're literally putting a technology in people's homes, in people's living rooms, in your pocket. I mean, that is the scariest thing to me about 5G, is you're going to be carrying these devices in your pocket. Like, these are going to be in your cell phones, in your mobile phones, in your smartphones. This technology is going to be in your hands. You're going to put it in your pocket next to your reproductive organs. You're going to, women are going to stuff it into their bras. It's pretty crazy to think that once this system goes live, all of these devices are going to be communicating using this microwave technology with local antennas nearby, and what effect that's going to have on all of us. Those questions haven't been answered, unfortunately, and they haven't been properly researched.
Yeah, it's going to have a huge effect on everybody, and mobile phones are one of the key parts of it. The surveillance system can't work if people don't have smartphones. I don't have smartphones, so I don't carry a phone with me anywhere. These things track everything you do. You basically, it's like you're carrying around your own ankle bracelet. People talk about ankle bracelets to block people for confinement into their houses. Well, this is what these smartphones are. They track every single thing you do. They even measure barometric pressure. So your smartphone knows when you get in and out of a car. It knows when you go up and down stairs. It knows everything you're doing. It can conceivably track every moment of every day, every conversation you have, everybody you speak to, every shop you go into, every time you get in and out of a vehicle, everything you do. So, without these devices, the whole system couldn't come online. And eventually they're saying, and they're making it so you need these devices. I mean, they're talking about even removing landlines from homes. So,
Mm-hmm.
and landlines are always your last line of defense. I mean, landlines have their own 5-volt power system in them. So if the power goes down, you can still call people on your telephone. You can still get the word out. You can still get messages to people. But they want to take all this stuff away as well. So, yeah, I mean, this is what I say to a lot of people when I see them, even at conferences, when I go around and do these speaking tours and things, and people come up and they tell me they're an activist, and I go, yeah, well, you've got a smartphone and you're complaining about the New World Order. The New World Order is the smartphone. The smartphone is the New World Order. So, but I need it for this and that. Well, actually, I do all this stuff and I don't own a smartphone. I get a lot of time. People say, if I gave up my smartphone, how could I watch your podcasts, Max? Well, I don't have a smartphone, or I make the podcast. I watch other people's podcasts. I do it on the computer when I'm at home. I don't take the digital world out with me into the real world, because the real world is falling apart and it's turning into a prison system because everyone's got their heads locked in these little devices. They're not looking around them at what's happening, and they need to. They really, really need to.
Oh, they do. And it's such a problem. I mean, you can't even have a conversation with the person sitting next to you anymore because we've lost the social skills to do that, and we're all distracted. I mean, people need to understand that there are psychological principles at play here when you're using this technology. And the people who create these apps, unfortunately, like myself, as I've created some of this stuff, and I'm equally as guilty. We in the tech industry take advantage of psychology when building applications to increase the addiction potential, to get you to pay attention to it more. We know the psychological limits of how people interpret their relationships and how to interact with those people. There is a limit for the average human being to how many people they can manage and interact with. The numbers for a given person is somewhere directly between 7 and 11 in terms of being able to manage people directly. This is why if you look at like sports teams, for example, most of the teams, depending upon the sport, are somewhere between 6 and maybe 12 players, because you can only actively manage so many people directly in real time to be able to achieve a goal. Then you also have the kind of community sense and the psychological limit of what a community is. And that limit they've discovered is around 150. So when you hit 150 friends on Facebook or one of these social networks or whatever, psychologically, your brain taps out. You're like, okay, I'm done. I've got 150 friends now. You've hit that threshold. So you stop seeking new relationships. You stop seeking new relationships with other people because in your head, you're carrying all of these relationships with you. You already established who your community is, but it's a false reality. It's fake. It's not real. And it was designed by someone in the tech industry to make you feel that feeling and make you feel that sense of belongingness, even though you're sitting alone in your room with the device in your hand and there's no one else with you.
Yeah, and even you being able to see that and admit that, when you look back at what you were doing when you were involved in the industry and you were making those apps, none of that was in your head about control. None of it was in your head about where it's leading. It was all about the whole wave that you were on, the ride that you were on of being able to create this stuff and how cool it was that you're doing this and all the income you can get from it and the shoulders you can rub with and how you're going into this world. Mm-hmm. And you're not thinking about it. That's why you can't say these people that are creating these apps are evil people. They're just programmed and they're in this wave and they're just riding this wave. And
I had the blinders on for 5 years when I ran around you. Yeah,
yeah.
That's what it was. I wasn't paying attention. I didn't understand.
Yeah, because you get into that and you bring kids out of school and you create this, wow, look what you can do. You can become a millionaire overnight by just creating the right software, and it's all militarized. The whole thing gets militarized. I know a guy who was working for a game. He was working for a Japanese gaming company, and he was creating an artificial intelligence for a robot within the game that you would go into this game. It was like a first-person shooter, and you would go in and fight these robots. But these robots would learn from you. All you have to do is go in there and fight them once, and once you've fought them, they'll start to learn your style and be able to copy it. Mm-hmm. So they're self-learning, and they're being able to mimic. And within once you've beat them 10 times, you'll never beat them again because they know all your moves by then. So, and he's saying how cool it was and how great this game's going to be to be able to do this. And I'm thinking, do you realize what you're doing? Like you're creating an artificial intelligence which is self-learning, which will mimic people that you will never ever be able to beat. Do you honestly think that they don't have a military application for this, which is why they've created this game? I mean, can you look at what you're attributing to? And he couldn't see it. He couldn't see it at all. He just thought it was really cool that he was he found it challenging to create the algorithms and to create the program to be able to do this. It was that wave that he was on, so that's why you can't blame these people. It's all the result of programming. Most of the stuff we see in the world, all these people doing these bad things, it's the result of programming. I mean, sure, there's people at the top that probably know what's going on, but that would be way beyond the realms of government. Most of the people in government are even programmed to do what they're doing. So some of these people genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. I mean, you've got people like Bolton wanting to start a war with Iran, just pushing it and pushing it and pushing it because he's programmed to think that way. He probably really thinks it's the right thing because it's going to support Israel and support all this stuff he wants to do, And, all the people in Israel that want to kill all the Palestinians, they're programmed to think that way. You can't blame them for it. They're programmed to do this. It's all the result of programming. There's so much programming in this world, and it's all based on lies. Virtually everything we're told is a lie, and everyone's given a different lie to believe in, given a different nation to believe in, which is a lie in itself. I mean, it's very difficult to find the way out of this thing, which is why I've been encouraging people to go within and just look within, find themselves, because that's the way out. See the beauty of yourself. In Lakesh, we're all in this together. Nobody wants to have a war. Nobody wants to profit from you. Nobody wants to make your life harder. The only reason people do these things and want all this profit and stuff is because the world's kept in scarcity and they think that's the way out. Mm-hmm. Really, the way out is for us to remember who and what we are, brother. That's the way out, is for us to just learn empathy again and basic respect for each other again, and be able to discuss things openly without crucifying someone who thinks differently,
No, absolutely. So, and I mean, for me, meditation was a big one. It enabled me to look at myself introspectively, and then also to be able to analyze what was happening externally as well, because you really need to give yourself that time and space to be able to really interpret and understand things. I mean, compared to who I was 5-6 years ago versus who I am today, I mean, back then I would just make decisions impulsively and was constantly stuck in the moment and couldn't pay attention to anything. It was just like, as soon as my brain jumped from one thought to the next, I would pay attention to all of those thoughts as if they had meaning or purpose. And I now realize, no, you got to sit at the edge of the river, man, and just let all that shit go by. Because at the end of the day, we all live in this crazy stream of consciousness. We allow all this contamination into our thoughts and into the way that we see and view the world. And ultimately, you have to kind of sit back and give everything some time and space to be able to create that balance. Do you have anything that works in your life that kind of helps you create that balance?
No, look, just being comfortable with who I am, not taking the outcome. I was not always balanced. I was not always this way. I mean, my life was a train wreck up until I was 30 or 40. So, but no, just knowing who and what I am and removing stake in the outcome. And meditation helps. Absolutely, it does. Just reflection. Realizing that we're all in this together, realizing that there's nobody who is better or more deserving than anybody else, and seeing why we even do these things, why we even judge people this way. It all comes back to this social system and the scarcity system, the economic system. So, it's all been put here for us. We often judge ourselves according to parameters which are given to us by other people. And we fail to really understand ourselves and what we are. And that's what this journey is about. It's about self-discovery, and enlightenment is a strange thing. Enlightenment is a destructive process. Mm-hmm. Enlightenment does not mean you're going to become all warm and fuzzy and sit on top of a mountain, glowing in a state of nirvana. Enlightenment, bringing light to the darkness. What is light? Light is knowledge, it's information. And once you really have information, enlightenment, the world is not a pretty place. It breaks down everything you think was real about reality. and it's not a comfortable place for people to want to go through and for people to want to get to. So it's not easy to bring light to the darkness. It's not easy to bring people information of what the world is and where they're going, because they don't want to know. It's uncomfortable for them to know. They want to be comfortable. They want quiet enjoyment in their life. They want the pursuit of happiness, because they think happiness is all this other stuff. Happiness is a new car, it's a new house, it's winning the lotto or whatever. Really, happiness is peace within. Happiness is quiet enjoyment of your life, which you're not going to have if you don't pay attention to what's going on around us. And honestly, we could change the world in a day if we change our perspective of what is going on here, change our perspective of who we are and whether we need governments or all of this stuff. I mean, even all the rules and laws and legislation, people say, oh, what would we be if we didn't have this? There'd be crime everywhere. Well, the crime only exists because people are kept in a state of scarcity. That's the basis of all crime, unless it's crimes of passion, jealousy or whatever. But that's about it, and even when you look at most of the old wars, like back here in Australia, the 30 nations, the 30 original nations that were here before the white man came, any wars that broke out between these people was usually crimes of passion. It was because some guy fell in love with a girl from another tribe or whatever, So no real crime if there's no scarcity, and scarcity is manufactured. It's a result of the money system. And the way it's going, it's just getting worse and worse and worse, and society is getting more and more divided. But we could change it all by changing our perspective of who and what we are, and just stepping back and looking at this and going, hang on, I don't want to do this anymore. Let's do something else. We could turn the whole world into a garden. Use the whole military machine to all of the funding that they've got and the equipment they've got. We could, if the military stopped killing people and started tilling the earth and creating gardens and planting trees, we could change the world into an incredible paradise within 1 year. And we could get that happening by changing our perspective. I honestly believe we could change the world in a day if there was just this epiphany and people suddenly realized, actually, I have value. I actually have value. And so do you. Actually, we have equal value. Hey, let's do something else. Let's get along. Hey, what are you doing with your life? What's it like over there? Talk about things. It doesn't matter what people believe. All this stuff is programming anyway. So, yeah.
Well, it's been a pleasure having you on, and this has been an amazing conversation. Do you have any other final thoughts before we wrap up recording?
No, look, I'm good, brother. Thanks for having me on. It's been good to come and chat to you. Anybody who wants any more of my information, there's a website called thecrowhouse.com. You'll get terribly trolled for having me on, because I get a lot of trolls lately, because I don't think inside any particular box, and people don't seem to like that. But yeah, so it's been great to come and have a chat to you, Trent, and thanks for having me on, and we'll do it again soon.
Awesome. And you've got that YouTube channel as well that people can check out. Is there anywhere else that people can find you?
You'll find me on Steam it, Max Igan. You'll find me on LinkedIn as well. I mean, I don't use these platforms much except to share information. Same as Fascist Book, I just share information there. But if you send me an email through thecrowhouse.com, or you can go there, you'll find links to everything that I do from the Crow House. So, yeah, that's the best place to go.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on.
My pleasure, brother.
Thanks for watching another uncensored episode of TechPost.io. I'm your host, Trent Lapinski, and don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and hit that little notification bell next to the subscribe button so that you can get notified when we release new episodes. You can also find us on iTunes, Google Play, and other social networks, including Twitter and Facebook, at TechPost.io, and you can find me personally at Trent Lapinski. Once again, I'm Trent Lapinski, and this has been another great episode of TechPost.io. We'll see you soon.